As smartphones become a bigger part of our kids' lives, they take in information from all different news sources, blogs, you've got the podcasts, and of course, social media. A recent New York Times article digs deep into teens and misinformation, investigating how much kids really know about media literacy and whether schools are doing enough to help students think critically about the information they are taking in. It's an article that Emily McCormick with the Policy Project really connected with as a mother and as someone who cares about her neighbors and community. It got her thinking about how we can help kids recognize fact from opinion. We know all good education starts at home. This topic is no exception. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Misinformation in teens, we could just say misinformation. Yeah. I think even, well-meaning, educated adults are struggling these days to distinguish, truth from not.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much coming at us constantly. And one of the things I was thinking about as we were, chatting about this topic is that, a lot of the parent generation, we grew up without social media. So a lot of people who are in parenting mode right now had access to information from very few sources, right? As we grew up. And so when we get online, when we see social media, we have a little bit of an ability to be like, oh, wow, that's like, okay, where's this person coming from? Okay, but for our kids that are growing up in the social media age, in this internet age, they don't necessarily have this life experience that has told them that this is the right way to seek information, or maybe right or wrong, but this is a way that people seek information and kind of put information out there, and I should consider these things.
The internet becomes more of their lives. It's more of they're saturated in it. So I can see where to distinguish truth from not for them becomes dissecting their whole world.
100%. And it's so funny, I was talking to my 12-year-old the other day, and he's giving me this, he's got this really good memory. Yeah. And he's telling me this stat about earthquakes or something. And I'm like, are you guys learning about this in school? How do you know that? And he's like, oh, TikTok. And I'm like, oh, okay, so our source of information is now TikTok. And that is he saw that as news and relevant, and it probably was a good source. Yeah. I hadn't seen it before, but that's where they're getting their information. And so now as parents, for us to just recognize, man, information is just flowing from different directions at our kids, and helping them interpret it is as important as almost anything we could do.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about ways that we can, promote this media literacy at home. I also find myself, there's also a side conversation, a side topic to this about trust in general. Misinformation, I think, goes hand in hand with mistrust. And that has to be part of this too. They have to know not only how to seek it from a smart perspective, but how to use their gut and use their intuition too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. The one thing that I love when we start considering some of these things that we'll be talking about today is that your world only becomes better when you can understand it as a whole, right? Yes. When you're able to back up 10 steps and see, okay, this is one part of an argument. This is one piece of this. This is but I'm not getting this whole perspective until I look at these other things. And I think that that's what you're speaking to. It's this seek for truth in the world, and the more that we're informed and can kind of evaluate that, and that our kids can, the more they're able to trust that gut, like you said.
I find myself saying more and more truth is in the middle. Usually, not always, right? But you see those polarizing opinions, and usually
you can usually say,
we could talk about this all day. A couple great points of advice for parents. First, discussing social media algorithms, and also how those hold the ability to polarize facts and opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is super interesting. If you have read something on social media that says the world's going to turn into Jell-O tomorrow, right? And you've reacted to it oh my gosh, what? Yeah. What happens is these social media outlets, they're businesses, right? Yeah. They're trying to sell you just like, you love this red sweater, I love it too. Yeah. A clothing store is going to recognize that and try to sell that to you, right? Yeah. Same thing with social media. They see that you've reacted to that you've had some kind of emotional interaction, and they're going to feed you things that look like that. The Social Dilemma was this popular movie maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's well worth watching as a parent, because you realize this is a business. It's meant to sell, right? People are making money, and that's okay. Businesses are good, but that is how they make money, by feeding you stuff that makes you.
And that's dangerous. You think about that, feeding you only what you want to eat.
Precisely, because it's Cheetos and Skittles all day.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually just was having a chat with a very educated, smart woman the other day, and she was referencing a certain company brand. She goes, "Well, it's this and this and this," and I said, "Well, no, it's actually this, this, and this." And she goes, "Well, I'm only seeing this," and I said, "That's because that's all you want to see. Like it feeds you what you want."
Totally, and that is a perfect analogy comparing it to food, because it's like, yes, that's all I want. It actually hits my cravings, you know, the Skittles and Cheetos. But the reality is, like, because I know more, I know that I still have to sneak in a salad or sneak in a hamburger or whatever else to like be more well-rounded.
We touched on this, but just to emphasize, we have to teach our kids to consider both sides.
Yeah, and this is so interesting. You know, I think that we really hesitate on doing that, even as adults, right, to consider both sides. What I want to point out is the word consider. I am not saying you have to adopt a different side. I'm not saying that we should adopt a different side. Just consider it. Because one thing, as we seek truth and understanding about the world around us, we are looking for like a whole picture, like we referenced before. So considering the other side helps. It's a little bit more complex thinking method, right? Like it challenges our brain a little more to say like, I naturally am not like aligning with this or like feeling it. But what is it that all these other people are considering?
And let's get uncomfy there for a minute and just consider. I like that word, consider.
Yeah, it's just consider. It's not saying don't jump on board. You're not. And I want to say that by considering, you're not testifying of it. You're not subscribing to it. You're literally just opening your mind to say, like, what is driving other people to believe
As
that?
parents, we have to check our own perspective before we set out to teach this. And we also have to open some really robust discussions about fact and opinion.
Okay, so interesting about this, like checking your perspective. Sometimes it's referred to as bias, like where do I come from? What am I thinking? And I found that like, especially in heated, I do some stuff within policy and politics, and that tends to be a really contentious, like heated area. And a lot of times when I can step back and say, okay, I feel this way maybe because I was raised in, you know, a two-parent home, like, you know, these things that like made up my life. Are different from things that maybe made up this other opinion. And that, when I can kind of put myself in other people's shoes and also see the shoes that I'm wearing, like what kind of shoes am I wearing? You know, they might be different. It really helps you be able to understand where someone's coming from. An example is actually just a post that I did the other day. Nothing big, but I was talking about something about people who were migrating, right? And I was pointing out like that I thought that would be really challenging, and that you know, my thought was in this post, like, I admire like how difficult that would be, and I realize I haven't been asked to do that, and I feel lucky that I haven't. And somebody like came in with a very strong correction of what I'd said. I thought that it was like loving and for like embracing the way that I said it. They felt differently, and for a minute I wanted to be mad about that, and then I realized like, you know what, they have such a different perspective. They live in a different country. They're thinking something else, and so maybe it's okay for me to say like, okay, I can actually see where they're coming from.
I love that. I love that.
Humbling moment.
And finally, teaching and realizing that imagery can also fit into this file of misinformation. We see this all the time. An image will be recycled from a news outlet, and it really wasn't from the event they were referencing. I think this list is so fantastic, and it really does crack open some meaningful conversation that I know you're striking to have with your kids.
Absolutely.
It's important.
Yeah, it is. It's big. We've got so many things on our list as parents, but this is one we're paying attention to.
Emily, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brooke.